Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we are going to be taking a look at some combat videos coming out of supposedly Donetsk settlement, and I'm going to break down exactly what you do and do not want to do when you're clearing a house. Let's get into it. Okay, first and foremost, this title, Russian soldiers flee for their lives after Ukrainian Army free Donetsk settlement with Autel drones, doesn't appear to be accurate at all. Maybe it's true in a broad sense, but that's not what this video depicts. But what it does depict is a small group of soldiers attempting to assault a house. So we're going to break down the dangers of what they're doing wrong, what they could do differently, and how to properly establish a cordon and search. Fun fact, it's pretty hard. Okay, let's check it out. So we zoom in on this specific house. You can see it looks like a one of the few intact houses in this neighborhood, right? We zoom it out a little bit and you can see it looks like this house is destroyed, right? This house seems to have taken a lot of damage, this one, but this house seems relatively intact, and it seems to be made of a little bit sterner stuff. Like these archways may actually be concrete. That's probably a reason that individuals have chosen to occupy the house. Okay, so you can see here that it looks like there are troops here. It's not clear to me which side is which, and it looks like there is incoming fire pinging off the house here. So what does that say? Well, that says to me that right now you have a potentially dangerous situation, right? Because someone is putting rounds into this. Though I guess it's possible. No, it's definitely rounds hitting on the opposite side. Right now, you have a really, really poor decision because you have soldiers here, and then downrange, you have friendly forces putting rounds into here. So you see how this is already not properly set up. And when we zoom out, right, we can see somebody's actually crouched right here. So as these guys begin to receive fire, or as fire begins to occur, again, it's not clear to me that it's at them. This guy turns, and now they're really hustling out of there. Yep, so it looks like what probably happened, then the camera pans over, and you can see that there's some incoming fire right around here, around here, around here. And yeah, so what does this all mean? All right, what are they trying to do? Well, I think what they're trying to do is that there are enemy in this house. Actually, I won't even say that. I'm not certain that there are enemy in this house. This could just be straight confusion, right? These soldiers on this side could be like, wow, we're taking fire, not realizing that the fire they're taking is their own forces lighting up an empty house. I think that's one possible scenario. And I'm not gonna like dunk on them too badly, because if I had to do this without radios, this would also be a huge pain and be a real liability. But what you want to do, here's what should happen when you're clearing a house, right? Let's see if we can back it up just a little bit. We'll get to the, there you go, the zoom out picture. Okay, so let's say somebody was like, Paul, we think there's enemy in this house. You need to seal it. You need to secure it. What you need is a cordon and search, right? It's going to be more of a cordon and clear. But what you want to do first is position your forces in a way that you can watch this house. So I would probably try to get some forces maybe inside this house potentially to watch this entire backside of the home, right? This side and this side. I would maybe get forces in this house, right? Or potentially even in this area to watch, right? The far side and the front of the house, right? So probably like here and here would be two easy points, right? Like sort of covering 2 points on two corners on a square. That's probably what I would try to do, right? Maybe a 3-4 man team here, 3-4 man team here. Classically, in classic cordon and search, you also want an outer cordon. You want somebody watching outside. In this case, you could probably solve that problem by actually having like maybe 2 or 3 soldiers watching the house in this group and having another 2 soldiers maybe positioned outside the house, looking like down this field, down this road somehow, and have 2 soldiers in this sort of formation, right, also looking down the road and out. So you sort of have 360 degrees of coverage. You won't get snuck up on by anything big. But what you want is observation of the outside of the house. This is going to help you in 2 reasons. One, if the enemy tries to flee, you can engage them, or if the enemy tries to maneuver outside the house, or even if there's intelligence that you can see through the windows. You can say, hey, I see a rifleman. He's on the 2nd floor. I think there might actually be 2, 2nd floor, south window. You go, okay, that helps the team that's going to be doing the clearing, right? So once you've established your cordon and you know that the enemy's not going to maneuver on you, then you start with your breach team, your clearing element. And that's probably what these guys would be. So what would happen in this instance is that they would prepare or pre-position along this wall. Then when the order is given, they are going to push, sprint across this yard and breach the door and clear and establish a foothold in like probably the foyer of the house. Really, if I had a choice, I wouldn't even do that. I would try to find any other entrance or even make my own, enter through a window, for example, or try to breach the 2nd floor, right? Because think about it. The enemy's dug into that house. They're going to have some surprises if you try to come through the front door, and you're less likely to encounter those surprises if you come in through a window. So the breach team is going to come in, and the cordon is going to functionally be a support by fire. Now this is really hard because that cordon is going to be it's going to need a radio or some means to signal, hey, this is the room that we're in, right? So because obviously you don't want your forces to exit and take fire from your own cordon. So it's really hard to make those coordinations. If you don't have radio comms, what you can do is actually have like a flag or even a chem light, hang it outside the window of the rooms that you have cleared. So that way, at least your observers in the cordon know, hey, we know that this room is clear because someone's hung a sheet outside of it, or a VS17 panel, or a chem light, right? Or even just sometimes people use chalk or paint to mark cleared areas, anything to mark it, right? Your clearing team is gonna sweep room to room slowly, systematically. And again, if you have radios, your cordon team is gonna be feeding them intelligence about movement inside the house, areas they haven't been, and is gonna be watching your back to make sure the enemy doesn't exit, come around, and come up behind you. So that is how you classically should do it. And I think that maybe what we're seeing here is that that's actually occurring, but things are a little bit messy. This unit, right, maybe they're supposed to be the breach team, but they panic when they start taking fire. But in fact, it's actually their cordon members lighting up movement inside the house. But without radios, they may not know that. They may just think that someone inside the house is shooting at them. So again, this is sort of why the US military invests so heavily in command and control. This is why we constantly do exercises of all sorts involving communications. Sometimes we do literally what's called a COMEX, where soldiers will go out and they will just stand somewhere. And they will say, hey, we want to actually practice setting up our relays. We want to practice making sure we can communicate with each other, that our ComSec is good. Small units can even do exercises where they literally sit in the same room and talk to each other on the radio. So you could just be like, have a pretend radio and be like, Roughneck 1-6, this is Roughneck 2-3. Go ahead, 2-3, right? You just talk to each other. You're literally looking at each other in the same room. Be like, be advised, I'm going to be going to the latrine. Over. Roger. Like, you can do that. You can practice that sort of thing. It's so important to learn to communicate clearly what you are doing, right? And the military, that's one of the reasons they have their own kind of weird language for things, right? We used to talk about not just going somewhere. You wouldn't use I went there or I drove there. You would use, hey, I maneuvered. And that reflects that you were moving in a tactical way. It tells you about the environment. and it tells you something about the mission and intent. So again, clear communications, simple, can make a massive difference in an operation. I mean, look how confused this is going to be now. This is the same clip run again, but look at the level of confusion these soldiers are up to. Also, shout out to this one dude who zigged when he should have zagged. He's now cut off from his buddies, and all his buddies have zagged. Just want to point that out. Again, I don't fault people. You take fire, you GTFO. I respect it. But he's probably going to want to get back with his buddies here in a minute. So, like we talked about, this is just, they're running the same scene again. Yeah, this is the breach team. I really think they only think they're coming under fire, but in fact, they're not. Anyway, guys, hopefully you learned something about how to properly clear a house or engage in some urban suburban combat. Of course, as you guys have noticed, it requires a fairly large number of personnel. And if you have a small unit, you may not have a choice. Your cordon may be very small and very limited. But you make the best with what you got. Anyway, guys, of course, if you noticed, a lot of combat footage YouTube has recently been cracking down, deemed it a little too spicy for YouTube's taste. So I do it all on my Patreon. Thanks, my Lieutenant tier patrons. Of course, be sure to subscribe. Link is in the description. See ya.